You'd think with such an incremental update to the iPhone that there wouldn't be much to talk about, but boy am I wrong. There is so much to talk about with this phone. I'll be covering the overheating issues, the action button, the USB-C, and of course, most importantly, that camera. So there's been quite a hoo-ha about the overheating issues with the iPhone 15 Pro. And yes, when I first set up my iPhone 15 Pro, when I first started using it, the first couple of days, it was hot. Like, it was actually really hot. It didn't get uncomfortably hot, but I could definitely tell that it was hotter than usual. But now that I'm a couple of weeks in, I've had no issues with the overheating at all. It feels completely normal. I've had no issues with it randomly getting hot or anything like that. It's been running very smoothly. I even went for a short trip to the south of France where it was quite spicy, quite hot, around 30 degrees Celsius every day. And yeah, using this phone out in the sun whilst I was walking around and stuff, it's been completely fine, no overheating issues. But of course, when it does get hot outside and the phone naturally gets hot, the screen does dim. That's quite natural. That does happen with all phones, really, with all iPhones as far as I can tell. But like I said, it didn't like overheat. It didn't feel like I couldn't use the phone or anything like that. It was fine. Apple even came out with a statement about the overheating issues. They said that the device may feel warmer during the first few days after setting up or restoring the device because of increased background activity. But yeah, other than that, it seems like it's pretty normal if you have a hot phone for the first few days after you've set it up. So yeah, if you're worried about the overheating issues when it comes to the iPhone 15 Pro, I don't think it's something to be too concerned about. Like I said, it'll be hot for the first few days most likely. It seems like most people have been having the same experience as me, where after they've used it for a few days, for a few weeks, it's not been an issue. The design. So something that I've said in past reviews is that Apple do a good job of making iPhones feel like pieces of jewelry. They're shiny, delicate, and have some weight. The previous stainless steel model emulated this amazingly well. Titanium, on the other hand, isn't known to be a sort of luxury material. It instead has more industrial use cases, and Apple mentions on their own website it's the same alloy used on spacecrafts. This material choice makes the phone lighter than previously, and it's definitely noticeable. I don't think the titanium model feels as luxurious as the previous stainless steel model, but that doesn't make it a bad thing, as it still feels very premium. The titanium is primarily around the sides, which should make the device more rigid. The edges, the parts where the screen and the back connect to the sides, are much more rounded, so it feels a lot softer in the hand than the previous stainless steel model. I personally love the titanium. I've gone with the natural titanium color this time round, and it's the first time that I've gone with a lighter colored iPhone in 10 years. I was very on the fence, but now that I've got it, now that I have it in the hand, I think it looks stunning. However, the back is still glass, and like any glass, enough force will make it crack. I've had a lot of people ask me if it feels fragile, and it feels as fragile as any previous phone. If you drop it or apply excessive force, naturally it's going to crack. I feel like you'd be silly not to expect it to crack. That's what glass will do. As long as you take care of it, it should be fine. If you are someone who is prone to dropping your phone and like to use a protective case, make sure to check out the ones from Rhino Shield who are sponsoring this video. They basically have every type of iPhone case you could need. I have the Solid Suit, Clear and Mod NX cases here. My personal favourite is the Solid Suit. It's a simple and minimal case that offers a ton of protection, as well as providing an improved grip due to the rounded edges and slightly curved back. I've been using the Shell Beige one for the past 2 weeks and I love the colour. It goes well with the natural titanium. The MagSafe magnet is twice as strong as well, and I can definitely tell it stays attached to my MagSafe accessories much better. Rhino Shield are confident that these cases can help with a drop of up to 11 feet. Now, I'm not going to test that out myself, but from feeling these cases, the thickness and materials, I'm sure they can handle quite a bit of impact. The Clear case as well is 23% thinner, but still offers the amazing impact protection that Rhino Shield offers. You can also customize the cases a ton. You can change the color of the camera rings, the buttons, and even have your own print designs. You can really customize these cases. Even if you're not picking up a new phone, you can still upgrade or get a new look for your current phone with these new accessories. They also have cases for AirPods and Apple Watches. Use my link in the description and use the code OLIA10 to get 10% off your order. Make sure to check out Rhino Shield. The camera. So the biggest and significant change is the addition of the new 5x zoom, which is equivalent to 120mm. However, it's only limited to the Pro Max model. You won't get it on the standard Pro. I've been testing it out quite a bit for the past couple of weeks, and I have been trying to figure out whether the 5x is something I want enough to switch to the larger Pro Max. I'll share which one I actually ended up going with later on in the video. The 5x zoom really is incredible. I think what's most impressive about it is how steady you can keep the device. As the further you zoom in, usually the harder it is to stabilize the camera, but Apple have done a great job here. The 5x zoom does give you some great options for photography and video. I took a lot of shots at this focal length and I love the sort of compression look that it gives you. However, we still have the 3x zoom on the standard Pro, and with there being no natural 3x zoom on the Pro Max, it's zooming in on the main sensor when you go to 3x. I took exactly the same shot on both phones at 3x, and there is a huge difference. The standard Pro is of course going to beat the Pro Max here by a lot. You can see a huge difference in sharpness on the text on the yellow box. While zooming in on the lens, you can see the texture for the zoom ring is completely different. Now, the big question for a lot of people is whether it's worth going for the Pro Max for that 5x zoom. And I don't think there really is a right or wrong answer here. It really does come down to personal preference and whether you see yourself using the 5x more than the 3x. The rest of the camera, as far as I can tell, is exactly the same as the 14 Pro from last year, which to be honest, I was quite surprised at, as usually there's some sort of update to the camera, whether it's a better sensor, better lens or something, but nothing whatsoever. I'm actually quite disappointed by that. This is one of the biggest reasons I upgrade every year. I was hoping for at least a bigger sensor or a better lens or something like that. But yeah, it is what it is. I pretty much exclusively shoot in ProRAW. I would recommend it if you're looking for the best image quality and want to have more control over the images when editing them. When I edit my photos in Lightroom, put some presets on, the photos do look incredible for a smartphone. Shooting ProRAW and putting them into Lightroom removes Apple's way of processing the images. It strips them of the over sharpening that Apple likes to apply. They end up looking a lot more natural, as if they come from a higher end mirrorless camera. The depth of field is still there as well, giving you great separation between the subject and the background if the subject is close enough to the lens. I've noticed with this latest iOS update that the delay between taking shots with ProRAW has been reduced. It's still not as fast as taking pictures with ProRAW off, but it's definitely faster than before. There are a bunch of other software updates to the camera too. You can change the focal length of the primary camera. You can choose between 24mm, 28mm and 35mm. It's not physically giving you those lenses at those focal lengths, but I can see this being quite useful for some people. By default, pictures are now coming out at 24 megapixels rather than 12 megapixels, giving you higher detail images if you're not shooting in ProRAW, that is. It's essentially taking a 48 megapixel picture and then binning it down to 24 megapixels. When it comes to video, there is no doubt that the iPhone is king at shooting video. And this year they've introduced the ability to shoot log footage. Log is seriously awesome, and I was not expecting them to bring it to the iPhone. I shoot all of my YouTube videos in log on my Sony cameras, so it's very much a pro feature which I just wasn't expecting, but I'm pleased to see that they've introduced it on the iPhone. Log essentially gives you a flat image profile, making it easier to color grade and adjust the look of the final footage. This also makes it easier to match colors from different cameras. So now I should be able to intersect footage with an iPhone into my videos amongst my Sony footage without the jarring effect of a huge color difference. You can even connect an external SSD and record directly to it via the new USB-C port. We'll get into the USB-C port later on in the video, but this feature is straight up pro functionality. My Sony cameras don't even let me do that, but I can do it on an iPhone. I can connect up an SSD and record directly to an SSD. That to me is incredible. Like, that is awesome. And again, I'm really pleased to see Apple taking it quite seriously and letting you do something that's very much a pro thing. The footage that comes out from shooting log is seriously awesome. I love how the footage looks a lot more natural looking. Some will say cinematic almost, which I can completely see. Is the 15 Pro going to replace my mirrorless camera? No, it's not, to be honest, because the mirrorless cameras, professional cameras, they sit in their own market, their own segment. They're designed for people who are taking photography a bit more seriously. But as an overall package, it's actually amazing what an iPhone can do now. You can shoot ProRAW images at 48 megapixels. You can shoot video in log, 4K, 60 frames per second. Like, these are things that you usually only see in high-end professional cameras, but here we are, we have it in an iPhone. What's obviously lacking, of course, is the sensor, but physically you can't fit a bigger sensor into something like this. Otherwise it's going to make the device huge. It's not going to make it pocketable. But for what we have here in this slim profile, and for everything it can do, I really do think it's just incredible how good the cameras have gotten. When it comes to battery life, I'm going to brush over it very quickly because it's mostly the same as last year. I can get a day with no problem with the Pro and easily a day and a half with the Pro Max. All depends on usage, of course. If you're someone who's constantly browsing TikTok, Instagram, shooting lots of photos and videos, you're going to kill it much better. So if you're a heavy user, make sure to get an external battery pack or something, or maybe just have more chargers dotted around. Next up is the action button, which is a very welcome upgrade. Gone is the silent switcher, which I never really used. The action button for me is infinitely more useful. It has its own menu in the settings page where you're given a bunch of options. By default, it's on the silent mode switcher, but you can change it to focus, camera, torch, voice memo, magnifier, shortcut, accessibility feature, or just turn it off entirely. The key option here though is the shortcut feature. You can assign any shortcut you've made, and for anyone who has experience with the shortcuts app, you know how powerful this can be. For example, you can keep it simple and make it open any app with a shortcut, or you can make it super complex. So as an example, I could set up a shortcut where when I hit the action button, it plays my music in the morning, warms up my coffee, heats up my car, does whatever I really want it to in one sort of action, which yeah, it can make it really, really powerful if you mess around with shortcuts and if that's what you want it to do. I've kept it super simple though. I simply have it assigned to the camera app. Pressing the button again will also take a picture in the camera app, so I never actually have to move my finger away from the button. Makes taking pictures much quicker. The other big change, which has been expected for a while now, is the switch over to USB-C. The Lightning port has now gone. The USB-C port supports USB 3 speeds too, which should make it easier to move larger files to and from the device. This also now means you can connect a bunch of different USB-C accessories. Like I mentioned earlier, you can connect an external SSD and record video directly to it. You're shown when it's connected up and it shows how many minutes of recording you have available. You can even do the same with an SD card and an external SD card reader. I was also able to connect to my Pro Display XDR, but it only mirrors the iPhone display. It doesn't act as an external display. However, you could take this a step further and connect a wireless controller and play games. Now, people are already doing this with machines like the Steam Deck and the Nintendo Switch, so I think the potential here is huge. If developers take gaming on the iPhone more seriously, I could genuinely see this being a mini games console, but we're still very, very far away. But I see the potential. I feel like the potential is there. There's also the new A17 Pro chip in the device, which should of course make the device feel quicker, snappier. Doing sort of complex stuff should be quicker as well. As I said at the beginning of the video, even though this seems like an incremental update, I think the changes are actually bigger than people really understand. We have an all new titanium material, we have a new 5x camera, we have a new action button, which has replaced the long-standing silent switch, and we now have USB-C. There's quite a few significant changes there. Even with the new 5x zoom on the Pro Max, I ultimately ended up deciding to go with the standard Pro, and it's purely down to personal preference. I just simply prefer smaller phones. The Pro Max for me is just a bit too big. I can understand, you know, if you sort of force yourself to get used to it, you could probably get used to it, but I just prefer smaller phones, and I'm willing to make the sacrifice. I'm willing to make the sacrifice of not having a bigger battery, a bigger screen, 5x lens. Yeah, I'm willing to make that sacrifice and go with the smaller one. The 5x for me isn't enough of a feature for me to go from the smaller phone to the larger phone. If you're coming from an iPhone 13 Pro or older, you're going to see big improvements upgrading to the iPhone 15 Pro, especially when it comes to speed improvements and the camera. I think it's definitely worth upgrading from one of those older phones. This isn't really targeted at people upgrading from the 14 Pro, unless you really do want that 5x lens and you want the log functionality that you get with the camera. Most of the other stuff, I don't really think it's worth upgrading for. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this review. I will have an updated camera settings video coming very soon, going through the iPhone 15 Pro, going through the sort of camera settings and making sure everything is set up correctly so that you get the best image and video quality. So make sure to subscribe for that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and subscribe for more.